Welcome to Insights in Sound, where we talk to the people behind the scenes, behind the technology, and behind the music. People you may not know, but you should. And please check out insightsinsound.com for a full list of our podcasts and YouTube series.
You know, it's got to be a challenge to be able to take this baby that you have raised, you know, and give it over to someone else.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to know that you're giving it to the
Yeah.
right people.
Yeah.
You know, and not just to keep
that's
things
absolutely correct.
Not just for Garth,
Right.
You know, but for the legacy of that company,
Sure.
which, you know, did not. I mean, that wasn't a low profile company by any means, you know.
And I knew that what was happening or what had happened to me is rare, and, you know, you just thank God that you got these opportunities, I guess.
Yeah.
So from 97 until January of 2002, here I was, kind of lost, kind of thinking, yeah, you know, I don't have any fear because I don't owe any money.
Were you working?
It was horrible. Yeah. All the time.
Okay.
All the time.
Yeah, because that's what I'm thinking. You weren't just sitting back and doing nothing.
No,
of course not.
I was as busy or busier than ever, you know. And so somewhere in that period, I thought, you know, the first thing I tried to do was start a studio. Maybe now's the time. So, and also, I felt like I knew Martina's voice better than my own. You know, I've done probably 3,500 shows with her at this point. I mean, today.
Yeah.
But I always felt like in the studio, they're not capturing that voice as much as I want them to, because I know how big and powerful and incredible it is. And so I had thought also during that same time, maybe we should just put a vocal booth in the garage, get a great mic and, you know, a little bit of gear, and she could do vocals there.
You kind of outdid yourself a little bit on that, didn't you?
It went from that to this, but the all or none thing kicked in, of course. And 25% of my motivation when I built Blackbird, going through what I'd been through, going from Kansas to Tennessee to traveling the world or whatever, and meeting a lot of people. And I always felt like Nashville never got the respect it deserved, especially from LA or New York.
That's true.
And, you know, we were like the redheaded stepchild or whatever, whatever you want to, you know, however you want to look at it. So 25% of my motivation was, I want to build a studio that kicks the shit out of anything in LA or New York. And
yeah, you accomplished that.
At the end of the day, and I don't want it to ever sound arrogant, but I know we got the job done. So George Massenburg I met, we had the front building only. And I get a call from Vance Powell, who at the time, you know, we were working together. And he goes, hey man, I'm giving a tour to Massenburg and Kyle Lanning. And I thought, fuck, and I broke every traffic law getting here. And so I get out and I walk up to, you know, and there they are. And George turns to me and goes, what the fuck is a studio like this doing in Nashville, Tennessee?
That sounds like something George was saying.
Inside, I went, oh boy, here we go again. The fucking Nashville, you know. But I said, you know, George, just trying to do it right. That's all. And during that conversation, I said, you know, if you'd ever like to do something together, I'd be honored, which I would. And he goes, well, I've had the perfect room in my head for 25 years. I go, well, fuck that. Let's build it, you know. So I got the double lot behind us. This is the room that was in George's head for 25 years. And then we added even another property next door. And man, I was full speed ahead.
9 studios in all, right?
9 in at Blackbird, Nashville, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then about, I guess, 12 or 13 years ago, we'd have a number of interns that came in, and at the time they had to be a graduate or working on a degree somewhere to where this internship could also get school credit for them. And we're getting these kids in, and half of them are graduates, and they couldn't make a record if I held a gun to their head. They couldn't. One day, Vance and I are up front waiting on something, and what do we talk about? Audio. So the question comes up, what's your favorite bass drum, Mike? And the first kid was a 4-year school graduate. He goes, well, we didn't really get to mic a lot of drums because this or that or whatever. And I go, but you've graduated, right? And he goes, yeah. I go, huh? That's not right, you know. And then another guy, well, all we had was a 57. And I think, well, yeah, at least he knows what a 57 can do. But anyway, there were 4 kids up there, and all 4 of them,
wow,
it was unacceptable, I thought.
Yeah.
And that really got me going. And, you know, I don't want to sit around and bitch about shit. You know, no one wants to hear people bitching about anything. So bitch about it or do something about it. And I'm going to do something about it. So I think I'm going to start a school. And we're going to do it right. And they're going to be able to make a record. And in the fall of 2013, we did our first class. And my first call when I wanted to start school was Mark Rubel, who I'd met because he brought a class down from Illinois to Nashville, and we did like a 3-hour tour. And I gave him all T-shirts, and I just fell in love with Mark.
Oh yeah,
immediately.
What's not to love?
And you know, that was my first phone call, and he said yes. You know, and in the meantime, Tom Kinney at Mix and I were friends, and he told me about Kevin Becca.
Was Kevin still over at Crass at that point?
Yes. And he goes, he's at Crass, but he's, well, I shouldn't say that but he wasn't happy for whatever reason. And I thought, man, if I could get Mark Rubel and Kevin Becca.
That's a dream team right there.
It truly is. And I just went, damn the torpedoes, let's do it. And so Kevin and Mark and I, that much, wrote this curriculum. And our mantra going into this school thing is the greatest education in the shortest amount of time for the least amount of money possible, go. And to this day, that curriculum has been unbelievable and works. All we've done is we've added immersive audio to it because at that point the technology didn't exist.
Sure.
Now it does. And it's just really been pretty bulletproof, to be honest. And I love the school. I love helping younger people get started in this business. And I've thought a million times, if I would have been able to attend the Blackbird Academy, it would have saved 10 years.
Oh, sure.
But another thing you come to realize when, especially you get a few years, is that things happen for a reason, and they happen when they're supposed to. And that's life.
No question.
So maybe in that 10 years, maybe it made me better with my word, or have a great attitude no matter what, or whatever.
Gave you a different perspective.
Yes.
That's the whole point.
Yeah.
But you know, and that brings up one of the things that I said to you earlier on, I think off camera, that this school and Crass are two of the ones that I consider really the finest at it. And one of the things that really strikes me is, teaching this stuff, because we are probably one of the few disciplines that really combines art and technology, and so much of it is a combination of like subjective stuff, right? Like, do you like it or not, right?
The blessing and curse
Exactly.
of audio.
And at the same time, we're dealing with technology. We're dealing with companies, manufacturers who may or may not be
on the
shall we
same
say,
page.
Yeah, exactly. Like, do they really understand what we're trying to accomplish as educators, and all of that stuff. And I think that what I am really impressed with, and one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, is really your perspective on how you mingle those. How do you teach that? There's some stuff here that really, I used to say I can teach you how to run a compressor, but I can't teach you when to shut your mouth.
Right.
And there's so much of that. There's so much of that creative process involved. How did you get a handle on teaching that?
Well, we do teach etiquette in the studio, and what's expected out of you, and how to make the best impression. And the first thing I say to every class is that attitude is 99% of the gig, and it is. No one wants to work with an asshole or somebody that always has a better idea or whatever.
Yep.
Unless they're the artist or maybe the producer, I don't know. But, in general, especially when you go in to assist or do whatever, nose to the grindstone, pay attention, try to stay ahead of the game, and don't speak unless you're spoken directly to,
Yeah. It's almost like a sixth sense that you have to develop.
Yes.
Reading the room and stuff like that. I think that's the stuff that's really got to be, in a way, a challenge to teach.
Oh, yeah. It's so true. And I won't say the most stable, rational people work in music. They don't.
What, are you kidding?
And so the better you can handle yourself, everyone knows. Everyone pays attention. And let's say they want to go work somewhere else. They go, remember that kid over there? Let's call him. Because he was a great assistant or whatever he was doing. And that happens all the time. With the school, we did a live engineering and a studio engineering course. So we have two courses. And it's the same way live, Having a great attitude, you are going to go as far as you want to go, especially when you combine it with a decent work ethic and, other qualities that I'll say people like you're not stealing and lying and obviously
basic
common
stuff.
sense stuff, And so having a great attitude, and I'm not just talking about on a tour bus or in a control room, but with your parents,
in life.
your family, your siblings, your significant other. If you can keep a great attitude, you will go farther than you ever dreamed. And I really feel like my attitude is what allowed me to keep doing things and having more opportunities and this and that, And I've seen it work the other way 100 times, where there's a guy who maybe he's a great mixer, but he's miserable.
Yep.
And everyone around him's miserable. And let me tell you, pretty soon they go, let's get somebody else because this guy's a pain in the ass, or a girl, or whoever it is. And that attitude thing is critically important. And I'll tell these students, I'll go, if that were the only thing you learned, you spent your money well. But we're going to give you a solid foundation, and you will never stop learning in life.
And none of us do.
No.
The truly blessed among us, really, we never stop learning, and one thing I will say is, and I'm sure you've found this yourself, through teaching, we learn even more.
Oh, let me tell you, I didn't think I had any of the teaching genes in me, My dad, obviously,
Same here.
but some of the greatest things in my life right now are happening because of the school.
Yeah.
And these kids, we've had 5 or 6 Grammy winners. We've had, I haven't won a Grammy, but you know what? Once we hit 10 winners, I'm going to just claim I got one.
Honorary,
I got 10%
man.
of
Honorary Grammy, absolutely. Yeah.
But and the number of grads from the live program, out of all of them, 94 or 5% are gigging. Mm-hmm. And they're having careers. I've been on festivals with Martina where we had 7 Blackbird grads there throughout the day with different acts.
Uh-huh.
And I just thought, I'm so happy that we're doing this because, teaching is, well, it's just critically important. If you want to go farther, faster, the more you know, the more opportunities you're going to get and everything else. And I'm so proud of what's happened with all these different graduates. And I'll tell them first day, I'll go, at the end of the day, if you're not working, then we're not working.
Yeah.
You don't worry about the 94 or 5% that are working. You worry about the 4 or 5 or 6% that aren't working, But the beauty of the Blackbird Academy is in 6 months, you will know if this was meant to be the rest of your life or not.
Well, you mentioned earlier Al Schmidt.
Yes.
And how, and I mean, Al is a perfect example of passing that wisdom down. Phil Ramone was another.
Yes.
Another one I got to sit behind was Peter Asher.
I love him.
These are people who I think taught that same ethos that you're talking about. And that's what I think you're bringing to the table more so than all of this. Everybody can learn this.
Now, what I'll say is there are programs out there where you don't even touch a piece of gear for a year or two. Mm-hmm. We're 6 months. The first week or 10 days, you're going to have your hands on gear.
Yeah.
Know it or not, you're going to, and believe me, the rate at which you learn can speed up dramatically.
Oh, sure.
By doing it.
Sure.
And I just feel like that's one of the most important things. And the other great thing about this place is rooms in which we make hits every day. Well, you're recording too in here now.
Yeah.
And why shouldn't you make a record as good as whoever has the latest top 10 or number 1, whatever. And I really feel like hands on the gear is critically important. I feel like attitude is number 1 with everything. Mm-hmm. And then I'll tell them the second most important thing after attitude, marry a rock star. You might have some job security and whatever. I'm kidding. But
that could work out for some of them.
I have to throw my fortunate situation into the mix.
Well, I want to cover just a couple more things with you, and then we'll wrap this here.
Oh, man, I'm just getting warmed up.
You know what? I love this, man. I love this, absolutely. I've been waiting for this opportunity to just chew the shit with you, man. This is great, really. Let's talk about manufacturers a little bit, because there's a bridge between them and education, right? And I think that over the last few years, and I think that Blackbird has played a large part in this also, there's been kind of an interest from manufacturers. When I was telling you earlier, I did artist relations for Shure in Europe in the 90s. And even back then, I got a call one day from School of Audio Engineering in Vienna, and he wanted to bring Shure microphones in. And I don't remember if it actually worked out or not, to be honest, because there were a lot of other issues going on at the time. But one of the things that I realized even back then was that if you get a student and in the early phases of their learning, and you familiarize them with a brand, you're going to have certain brand loyalty there.
They're going to use those mics the rest of their life.
Exactly. So I think some companies are realizing that, but I think there is really sort of a motivation there of like, do you get the companies to work with you?
You know, that I won't. I think I have good ideas at times, and I bite off more than I can chew, probably. But I never expect anyone to give me anything, so I'd have a hard time calling up, Harman or whoever and saying, we could really, if you would donate 4 Clark Technic EQs or this or that, I'm no good at that. I'm not good at it. I just figure, you know what, we'll get these EQs.
Sure.
And try to make it happen that way. It's everybody is in business to make money. I've always felt like corporations should not own studios, because as a studio owner, you can't pay any attention to your accountant or your lawyer.
Sure.
Because even a year ago, someone could have looked at my books and said, get the hell out while you can.
Sure.
I've always had way too much debt. I've never cared. It's just one more motivation for me to go to work.
Well, that's the old joke about how you make $1 million in a recording studio,
Start
right?
with 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking more, not necessarily about donating gear or anything like that. I'm thinking about like when we work together with them, especially like a lot of the software companies, I think some of them now are coming to the obvious
the users
conclusion
and going, what can we do to make this
exactly
better?
It's like we're driving that to a certain extent, and especially in the last 20, 30 years, there's been much more of an influx of bringing people who are actually walking the walk, talking the talk into these companies and having that perspective of the end user in designing the gear and stuff like that. So
there's no doubt that needs to happen.
I think this is a valuable bridge to that, isn't it?
It is, because I will say we've had certain pieces donated to the school because, as you know, when let's say you're here and you're working in the A room and it's a Neve console and you kind of love that console because it sounds like this.
Right.
And when I do that, it sounds like this. And I kind of love that sound. And thus, when I get out of here, if I get hired, well, I want to be here. I want to be on this Neve console.
Sure.
And I trust them as a manufacturer. Like with Yamaha. Yamaha seems to be very, very reliable, like the old analog 4K, 3K, those consoles.
Bulletproof, man. Definitely.
They may not sound perfect to your ears, but they work.
But you know what they sound
every
like.
night. Yeah. And I'll always be a computer immigrant to a degree. My kids are natives. I'm not. And I really still prefer analog sound over digital, but I will say that the digital is getting better and better and better.
That battle's over.
And it's
not a hill to die on anymore.
It's definitely at an acceptable level now. When the MP3 was kind of became the norm, I felt like we're slipping. Because the higher quality at which you experience music, the more emotional it becomes.
Absolutely.
I've heard a song just playing through my computer, the little speakers in my computer. I've heard a song and went, and then I'll hear it in a control room and go, oh God, this is killing me, whatever.
Well, and that's one thing that has always struck me also, if you think about it. We're in this room. We're working on a piece of music.
Yes.
We have to always be conscious of the fact that no one else is going to have that same experience that we're having right now when we're creating it.
Yep.
And how can you bring a part of that forward so that it stays
Right.
in the recording. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's a
Okay. One rule for any engineers that work in the studio, whatever, never let anybody else do your rough mixes. Because
yep.
if the artist and even the producer have that rough mix for 3 months, well, in their head, this has kind of become correct.
Yeah.
And make it sound, even when I did the roughs, Martina will call and go, can you make it more like the rough? Yes, I can.
Yeah, God damn it, I can, Yep.
I'll fix this or clean up that or do this or do that, and I've always said that music's perfect in its imperfection. All these, and the Beatles were famous for a million happy mistakes.
And all the Motown stuff, the Stax stuff. There's so many clams in those recordings, man.
Yeah, but
they're perfect.
They're right.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're going to cover that song live, do the same clam.
Yep.
Out of respect to the original.
Absolutely, man.
It's, here comes the chorus, and everybody likes the chorus, and we're getting a little excited, and we're speeding up a little bit. I hate a click track because they use a click so that you can sit there and cut and paste a performance, and the verse from verse 3 would sound better here than the last take, and then chorus 2 we'll put in from the previous take. And Ken Scott even said to me one day, John, because Ken did a lot here in the brief time that he lived in Nashville, but he said, we used to capture a great performance, and now we're trying to create one.
Yes.
By cutting and pasting or whatever,
Yeah.
So I hope I didn't just distort that mic. But anyway, I love no click. I love no tuning. And fortunately, I'm not hyper pitch sensitive. I don't mind somebody going a little sharp or even a little flat if I believe what they're saying.
That's it exactly. It's a performance.
Now, there are people that if it's, 1/10 of 1% off, they're going, we need to redo that or tune it up or do whatever. And you just go, fuck, really? But I don't call myself a producer. I'm an engineer. And if the producer wants this, then that's what I'm going to do. Mm-hmm. That's my job. There is nothing that makes me happier than as if Brian Wilson walked in here, and in his head, he's already hearing the end product. To help him achieve that to the best possible ability to do that.
Right.
That's why we have spares for spares for spares. We have, speaking of like a Delta Lab acoustic computer. If you need that to get the sound you want, well, I'm going to be able to give you 2 or 3 of them.
Uh-huh.
And there's a major space station, not the plug-in, but the original, and then they did a reissue of it anyway. A Cooper Time Cube, the right mic on the right input, which solves all sorts of problems.
Yeah.
And just makes the hair on your arm stand up. And I love analog distortion. When Aretha Franklin hit that mic a little too hard, but you go, it's great.
Yeah.
I know how forceful and powerful she must have been singing because you're clipping something.
Yeah.
A mic pre or maybe the diaphragm of the microphone. Maybe it's the compressor. Maybe it's this. Maybe it's that, whatever it is. Analog distortion, I grew up on it, and in my DNA, that's what sounds right. Mm-hmm. Digital distortion sounds like ass, and I hate it. And it's not pretty, and there's nothing good I can grab with that to make it okay.
Yeah, you're never going to fix that.
No. No.
But there is really, going back to what you were saying about the contiguous performance, there really is something about that that I think is so, Ed Stasium told me a story about, first recording session he got stuck in. One of the first recording sessions was Gladys Knight, Midnight Train to Georgia.
Oh.
And he said she cut the whole thing, one vocal. She called him up a week later, said, I want to replace one line.
Yep.
Other than that one line, which he said, I defy you to find it because I can't even find it anymore, right? But
Right.
it's one performance. And that to me is
There's something great about that.
Yeah. It just brings something to you, that.
Well, everyone's gotten a little more lazy because we can fix all these things.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But no, that's not what we want to do.
Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Just do a performance where even though you may have a mistake or two, people are crying after they hear this song instead of, oh, that was a perfect vocal. Yeah, it was good, or,
Yeah. Well, and I think that's what gives you that whole timeless aspect to me, That's what I think is so important about that.
And as you referenced earlier, our job, the subjectivity of music, one person's going to love this song, another person hates that song. So you kind of have to do what you do. And if you like what I do, we're going to have a great time. And if you and I think totally different, then you're going to fire me. And I'm going to try not to take it personally and get on with life. It's that straight ahead. I could be on a Neve, an SSL, an API, a BiAmp, or a PV console. What I do, you're going to be able to tell my mix on any of those consoles.
Absolutely.
Because I like my toms a little louder than they should be. I love harmony blends that maybe aren't perfect. I love this, I love that. And you may not even understand, what you're doing. Mm-hmm. I've had people point out, man, you really, on one song, that bass drum, it's louder than the snare.
Okay.
And I never thought,
does it work
for the song? It just felt like it was in the right place for that song.
But that's just it. Does it work for the song?
Yeah.
And that, I think, it's funny, you talk about producer and engineer and stuff like that and artist and the whole relationship. On the one hand, you have some artists who will literally get a different producer for every record because they're evolving and things are changing. On the other hand, you get, Seal and Trevor Horn.
Yeah.
There's a marriage, right? That's not going to change.
George Martin and the Beatles.
Yeah, exactly, because there's just something about that chemistry that works for them.
Yes.
And who are we to say?
And, nobody wants to run out of ideas or, Martina made a ton of records with Paul Worley.
Uh-huh.
And at one point, and it was a covers record, we did Timeless, which was all classic country.
Right.
You know what? Actually, I think Paul did. But she thought, and it was like a mutual decision with those two. I'm going to try XYZ.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? I say, whatever makes you happy as an artist, that's what you need to do.
And as an artist, you're continually evolving.
Yes.
Anyway. At least we hope so, right?
Yes. Yes.
If the record company has not stifled you from evolving, you're evolving, and theoretically, every single day, or at least every single song, could be a completely different approach. Who are we to say?
Right.
Unless we are that artist.
Right.
So
that's a fact.
Yeah.
Man. Well, and another crime, really, in music. I love record labels that don't quash originality or something different out of an artist who maybe, had a lot of success doing this and now they're doing something different. Let them be different, because chances are something they do is going to really flip a switch for people.
Mm-hmm.
It breaks my heart when I hear about labels not pushing an album because they're pissed off at the
Yeah.
band or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know, cutting
Yeah.
off your nose to spite your own face, you know, it's ridiculous. I just feel like, and today there's more opportunity to be able to make music at home or in your bedroom or in your garage or whatever. With technology, you're not as limited as you would have been even 10 years ago.
Sure.
So I feel like the hardest part in music today is just getting heard. And the number one rule in Nashville is that nothing is more important than the song.
Right.
And you could take a great song and you could record it with 3 microphones and a cassette deck, and it's still a great song.
Yep.
You can take an average or less song and spend $1 million on the production, and it still doesn't.
It's a polished turd.
Yes,
Yep.
yes.
Absolutely.
And man, songwriting is one of the greatest gifts anyone could ever get.
Truly.
I don't know how the Beatles wrote the quality of songs and recorded the at all the ideas and recording and everything.
In that short a time span.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. No kidding.
I mean,
no kidding.
She Loves You, yeah, 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 to I Am the Walrus in 3 years or less.
The
And you just
evolution's
go,
amazing.
this
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
I mean,
But you know, the thing about that is that they were given the freedom to evolve as artists.
Yes.
Which I think, as music has become more and more commercialized and commodified in that sense, that's more and more difficult to do.
well, all the rules at EMI Studios or Abbey Road,
Yeah.
bass drum mic can't be closer than 3 feet.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
guess what? After a couple of hit albums, they threw all those rules out the window.
Right. Well, look at you were talking about Revolution earlier.
Yeah.
You know, plugging the
Two
guitars right into the desk and
V76, yeah.
all that stuff.
And going through a Telefunken Pre and distorting
yeah.
the shit out of it. And,
Yep.
and the hair on your arms goes, whoa!
Yeah, and you just go, holy shit, there's some energy there.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, we could do this all day, but
I know.
but I'm going to wrap here with a question that you are probably more qualified to answer than almost anybody. I usually wrap with this question.
Okay.
But you are like the epitome of the person I want to hear the answer from. Okay. So you came up in a completely different era, completely different world musically, and here we are now today in what I would really kind of call the post-major label era to a certain extent. Technology's different. The way we create music so completely different. We have an undo key now. We don't use razor blades anymore. All that stuff. What would you tell 15-year-old you coming up in this day and age now?
Well, I would say if you've got the music gene, if you feel like you really want to be involved in either making music or recording music or whatever, well, number one, I guess I'd tell them, come to the Blackbird Academy. And you will learn, everything you learn is going to go towards your career. Study the history. See whose shoulders we're all standing on, and we are. I think about Al Schmidt. He's, one of the four faces,
Right, exactly. Yeah.
I think of Tom Dowd or, oh man, just.
Bruce Swedien. That's another one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Man.
And of course Ed Cherney.
Yes.
So many of these greats.
We need
a
bigger Mount Rushmore.
We do, man. We do.
There are so many people, but learn how to make the sounds or record the sounds in a way that appeals to you, and with any luck, it will appeal to millions of people. I feel like you don't really have a choice. And even though at 15, I had no idea that I'd be working in music. No idea. That would have been a fantasy. That would be too good to be true, you know? And me, I get to travel and tour. I get to record. And not just here, but other places. And my life couldn't be better. I am so blessed to be able to work in music and make a living.
And pass it on to others.
Yes. And that is really important. Nothing will make me happier than to have some kid in 50 years go, well, my granddad went to the Blackbird Academy and they showed him this trick about miking a bass drum and that's what I'm going to do, But no, nothing would make me happier than to know that something we did can benefit the whole world, not just the music makers, but the music listeners in the future. And the beauty of making a great recording is about the closest thing to magic that I can think of. There's a couple of songs I've mixed. Generally, I'll hate everything I do the first year, and as time goes by,
I know that feeling.
Soften up a little,
Yeah.
But just knowing that this song could be around forever, and maybe if somebody really looks into it, my name will be in there somewhere. That's a great feeling. But knowing that our grads have already won Grammys, that's forever too, and that makes me just as happy, really, Man, I guess I'd say this. Rock or suck. Either you rock or you suck. That's what it says on our t-shirts, which means if you're going to do something, just do it right. And right's hard.
It is.
It's real hard.
It is.
Good is the enemy of great because you're tempted to take good, but it really doesn't get anyone's attention. So, if you're fortunate enough to work in music, do the greatest possible work you can. Hopefully you inspire someone. Hopefully people inspire you. And you get that satisfaction of doing something that you feel in your heart and soul is great, and it'll be around forever. A month of doing something and learning the entire time is worth a lifetime of work, getting to record with Al Schmidt 3 or 4 different times and I learned more from those sessions without Al even having to say it.
Yeah.
I understood why he was doing what he was doing. And that guy was so gifted and did it forever and won more Grammys than you can shake a stick at. And you know what? But he was a tough guy when he had to be.
Sure.
I love that.
But he passed it along. And
he did.
It's good to see that we who are younger than him, but older than the next generations, that we can continue to pass that along, because I think that is really the most valuable thing right there, isn't it not?
Well, what's the saying about if you ignore history, you're condemned to repeat it?
Pretty
pay
much.
attention.
Yeah.
See what happens. Find music you love. Delve into it a little bit. The part of the great thing about growing up in the 60s was that it was mysterious in a way. I didn't know what the band looked like half the time.
Yeah.
I didn't know where they were from. I didn't know this. I didn't know that. Today, if I hear a song, in about an hour, I can tell you the lead singer's dog's name,
Yep.
There's not a lot of mystery left. So learn how these records are made that you love, or if they have a documentary, like we just last night watched a Joan Jett documentary. It's great. You know, it was great. And I've gotten to do live shows with her a number of times. But my respect for her now is greater than ever because I didn't realize
Right. You see
half
what
the
people
shit
went
she had to
through.
go through.
Yeah, yeah.
Or the making of Dark Side of the Moon, or Standing in the Shadows of Motown.
Yeah.
Those things will change your life.
Oh, absolutely, man.
You know?
Absolutely. And just being around the creative process.
Yes.
I think also that changes your life right there. And, you know, we are fortunate to have been able to experience that,
Yes.
to understand that, and to be able to pass that along. That's,
It never ceased to amaze me that we'll be working on a song, and let's say I like the song a lot, and then we had background vocals. And I'm just sitting there going, oh my God, this song just went from here to here.
Yep.
And then we're going to add some percussion or something or this or that, and it just keeps getting greater. And you go, well, now I understand music a little bit better. You know, it's funny, and there was Glenn John's book, and he said his first experience with the Beatles was he did some Saturday program, and it was televised, whatever, and the bands always brought the instrument tracks, but they did live vocals. And he said the Beatles tracks sounded a lot like everybody else's tracks, to be honest, but the sound of their voices together, that said it all.
that's where they married a lot of other influences.
Oh,
you
no
know,
kidding.
the folk influences and the rock influence, the blues, all that
Yeah.
stuff. I think that is probably a big part of what the appeal was. You know, you were talking about what was it that really just turned everything on its ear. And that,
Yeah.
I think, was a big part of it.
Man, I hope, I don't think it'll happen, but I would love if we had another Beatles at some point. But right now it's so hard to get it's hard to get ubiquitous because there are a million channels
Yeah.
and ways to experience music. You know, back then we had 3 channels in a public channel
Right.
or whatever. We had
Couple of
maybe
major labels and
one
you
rock
know.
station or
Yeah.
whatever it was, you know.
Yep.
And now you have thousands of channels of everything. And but you know, I would love it if we had great music to look forward to, you know. That's the key.
Well, I think you're doing your part, man.
And we'll die trying. No, I'm not kidding. I love it all.
John McBride, thank you for being
Oh,
my guest.
thank you, Daniel.
It's been a pleasure.
It's a great day.
Hey, I'm Daniel Keller. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and join us each week for Insights in Sound.